That was Axios Entertainment in collaboration with Campfire Studios, Shaquille O'Neal's Jersey Legends, and, of course, Amazon. So thank you all so much for sticking around for that screening. We thought it would give you some context to the conversations we're about to have with you. We have two of the stars from our documentary here with us for our first panel. I am so excited to introduce Alia Armstrong, LSU's former top track star. Alia, come on up. And of course, we have Taylor Jacobs, Associate Athletic Director of LSU and Head of NIL at LSU. By the way, huge round of applause to Taylor, who gave birth 4 days after that interview. You probably saw she was pretty pregnant. It's fitting, actually, Taylor, talking about you giving birth right after, because before this event started, Aaliyah came here with her mom. And it's a reminder that when kids go off to school, they are separated from their primary support system and the person who is typically helping them to guide on business decisions, hence where you come in. But you were early to the game, Taylor. Not all schools had somebody that was leading NIL. Do you think you are still early, or do you think most other schools at this point have started to adopt roles like yours?
I definitely think other schools are starting to adopt roles, but because we were ready pretty much July 1 of 2021, we, in my opinion, are that much further ahead of where other schools are. I definitely think everyone's seeing the importance of it now. I think I said it in the show, is not everyone wanted to touch NIL, and several athletic directors and athletic departments said, we're just going to let this kind of go and it'll pass and we'll be done with it. Whereas we at LSU said, no, we're going to put a billboard in Times Square and we'll, make it a thing.
But I guess the follow-up to that is, what's the value add to LSU? Because the risk would be your athletes get distracted. They're not focusing on performing for your program. What made you want to invest in NIL knowing that that could be a risk?
So biggest thing, student athlete experience. If you ask any student athlete going to college now what their student athlete experience consists of, they're probably going to list NIL first. Previously, prior to NIL, it was, academic services and mental health and facilities and all of those things. That's what a coach would sell on a recruiting visit. Now they're selling the NIL resources that we have at LSU. So it's not just the brand that you can come associate yourself with, but it's also, look at this department we have who's here to support you in the space. So, now I meet with every recruit that comes on campus now to tell them what we do. So.
Wow. And Aaliyah, so from your perspective, I love that they showed in the video how proactive you were about approaching Taylor and trying to get the resources that you needed. Do you feel as though, because you were from the first crop of students entering this NIL situation since the law passed, that you guys sort of had to figure it out for yourselves more than maybe some of the freshmen coming in now?
I would say that in my experience with Taylor when we first met, she knows that I was struggling really hard. So I would say that because I spoke up, and obviously that's mentioned in the documentary, because I spoke up about my situation and because I wasn't ashamed of it, because everybody struggles. So because I spoke up about it, I feel like that's going to change the narrative with other people, because they're going to feel like they can speak up as well. Even upon the premiere and just the show coming out to life, they're going to see someone who struggled, but she didn't give up.
Love that. Round of applause for Aaliyah. And Aaliyah, can you just quickly, in a few sentences, tell us about your situation? Where did you come from? Why was getting involved in NIL important to you?
Okay, well, just like a really fast forward through my life, I was born in Los Angeles in 2000, and my mom struggled with me and my sister for 15 years, and our life changed in 2015 when we moved to New Orleans. And we had to move to New Orleans because my mom was a single mother struggling. So, she was struggling, and so she wanted better life for her children, because from birth she told us we were going to be great and nothing less than that. So when we moved to New Orleans, my life changed, and just coming from seeing what my mom did for me and my sister, it was instilled in me to never give up on anything, because she had nights where she wouldn't even eat, but we was eating. So that's just something that sat with me, and me approaching Taylor, I feel like that was instilled from my mom. And so now that I've had NIL in my life, my mom is sitting right there, and she's in New York with me at my private screening. So look at God.
Yes.
That's him.
That's
not,
right.
Not nobody else. That's him.
That's an incredible story. And thank you, by the way, for joining. When we think about what happens for you next, obviously your LSU journey is done. You had the Olympic trials. You had world championships. You've had so many other things going on. Like, what comes next for you, and what does that commercial journey look like? Are you still talking to brands and sponsors?
Yeah, okay. So right now I'm based in Houston because my mom, of course, sacrificing again. I moved there for 6 weeks for a training camp because I unfortunately didn't make this Paris Olympics, but I'll be in 2028.
Yes, you
So we're investing in our life together as a mother and daughter. She moved with me to Houston for 6 weeks so I can train for that. And so just doing that and focusing on my brand, building my name, showing my name so that God's name can be the greater name.
It's amazing to hear you say that. We interviewed Flaw J. Johnson at CAM, and she was talking about God and how grateful she was for his support, her support. And it's amazing to hear how humble and grateful these athletes are. These are not people who grovel in the money. And Taylor, I'm sure you see that and feel that from your experience with them. I feel that from you, Aaliyah. Taylor, what keeps these athletes so grounded, even though they've got millions coming in? Is it the parental support? Is it the school support? How do you do that?
I mean, it's their support. I think we have such a great group of student athletes at LSU, and they get it. I mean, you see it in Aaliyah's story in the show. It's hard. Like, this isn't it. Contrary to what everyone thinks in the world, not everyone is just being handed all of this NIL money. And I think you'll see it more in the season. I don't want to give too much away, but you'll see the work that they have to put into this NIL journey. Again, it's not just free handouts, which is what is reported on a lot of the time. I can attest to it's not that. And they're working very hard, and they're seeing that it's another job and it's work that they have to put in. And so then I think they've taken a step back and they've seen, holy cow, like, this is work. And like, Mom, Dad, you've been working for me and working very hard for a long time. Taylor, like, they see it, like, y'all are putting in the work. So now I appreciate that. And, you know, they're honestly, I love our athletes. They're like my children.
Aaliyah, you talk about the balance of this basically being like a full-time job on top of school and on top of, for you, doing track and field. Like, how do you actually find that balance without compromising the thing that's getting you those deals, which is the craft that you're doing, the track and field?
Well, I will say this, just to start off, in the show that you were, the sneak peek that you just watched, I did say that I was a kid, but what NIL did was turn me into a woman. And that's a woman of God. And so now I'm more organized. I feel like that has changed my dynamic. But I feel like that foundation has brought me to where I'm at right now, because I had to lock in when there's these big brands saying like, hey, we want to work with you. I wasn't just going to be like, oh, I'm just going to ignore this email. Like, I can't ignore an email, like with the WWE emailing me saying, we want you to be my athlete.
She could, in fact, not ignore the email, because I was in her ear saying, respond to
Her
that email.
too. When I tell you, she was on me. So I had the support and I had the team. I had someone who held me accountable. She was my partner during this. So I feel like this truly brought me into my womanhood and into my next chapter in life. And that's all that I really wanted out of it. The money is material.
It's material because the experience you get out of it will one day be worth way more even than what you make now in NIL. Taylor, to that point, you have some athletes like Livy Dunn who are making millions, and you have other athletes on behalf of maybe less visible sports like track who aren't making the same amount and don't have equal deals. How are you trying to balance that equilibrium, bring more attention to less recognized athletes, while also at the same time celebrating the success of, you know, all of these other major athletes?
Yeah, so within our office, we meet with every team individually at the beginning of the year, and then now we'll start going probably throughout the semester now that the staff is growing, so it's not just me anymore. But we meet with everyone at the beginning of the year to let them know, A, we're here, B, you have resources, C, use us as much as you want, come meet with us and we'll help you, but you also have to put forth a little bit of the effort. That being said too, we're also educating the brands in the space. So still there's a ton of businesses that don't understand NIL and the value of NIL. So we are able to go out and educate the businesses and the brand side to say, hey, here's the benefit of getting involved in NIL. And oh, by the way, let me introduce you to my roster of athletes that include not just football, but also track and field and beach volleyball and all of these other sports that don't have the same recognition, but have incredible student athletes on their roster.
Libby was saying something in the video that caught my attention, which is she kind of dismissed the people who were saying NIL isn't good as haters. And I thought that the tenacity that she brought to that statement was really powerful. You are definitely training these athletes on the business side, but also emotionally being able to stand up to people who don't want to give them their hard-earned money. How do you handle that situation?
I mean, teaching them, to be tough. You're not always going to get a yes. You're going to hear no's, but how can you take that no and build it into you and your character and who you are to be a bigger and better person, right? I haven't gotten everything I wanted in my career, and I've been punched in the face a few times. And sometimes you just have to step back and say, it's okay. That wasn't the right opportunity and we're going to figure it out. And I think the athletes are seeing that now, especially at the beginning of NIL. I quite literally think they all thought that we were just going to start like fanning out money. And I was like, first off, we don't pay you at the school. They all came to me like, where's my money? I was like, I'm not paying you. But they kind of thought it was that. And they've all had to take a moment to say, okay, hold on. I need to work. I need to put a little effort in, and I need to build my brand that will last longer. We always say, don't just go for the one NIL deal. You want the second, third, fourth, fifth deal, and then maybe even potentially that job offer after college, because at some point, Aaliyah's going to have the opportunity to turn pro. I did not. When my eligibility ended, I did
which sport?
Tennis. I was a women's tennis player. So I had to figure out what to do with my hands. Like quite literally, I was like, I don't know what to do. I called my mom. I said, what do I do? She said, you literally have 2 college degrees, like figure it out. I was like, so here we are. And so that's what we're trying to teach them, like leverage these relationships and get to know these people and, say thank you after a deal. Say thank you. Send a thank you to a brand, because that thank you goes a long way. And we've seen athletes who are able to now capitalize on these deals after they finish their eligibility.
One of the things that you were talking about in the film was that you are giving really tactical advice, social media guides, content calendars. The whole gamut. Aaliyah, do you feel as though this is a full-time job with skill sets that you will now take on? Do you want to go into more of like building a social media brand and doing these types of things now that you've learned that type of stuff? Or is the primary focus still going to be Olympics, track, and if that comes along later in life, maybe?
That's a good question. I feel as though this kind of prepared me for partnerships and endorsements. So I want to be able to do both, because I do have dreams of being an actress one day. I do have dreams of being in my own movie. And so I think that it's not really hard. This showed me that I can do both things, and I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But I can do both things and be able to juggle the business side versus, okay, now we got to lock in for my race. So, yeah.
I love that you aspire to be an actress, because there was once this pretty good basketball player, but he became incredible. And he's a Jersey guy, so I appreciate him. And he went on to not just become one of the best basketball players of all time, but he started a production company called Jersey Legends, which co-produced this doc, and that's Shaquille O'Neal. So you should definitely keep those ambitions.
Yeah, and he will say, sneak peek if you tune in, he talks a lot about the brand and the business behind that side of things, and is quite literally brilliant when it comes to that space. I'm still trying to get him in front of all of our student athletes at LSU. I told him if he doesn't come this football season, I'm over it.
That's a pretty big threat. I think Shaquille O'Neal has something that a lot of those athletes embody, which is he's just a really nice guy, personable person. And I know that all of our partners have really enjoyed making the documentary with you, because you were really great to work with. So thank you. Just want to close out. At Axios, we like to end with one fun thing. So Aaliyah, I have 2 for you. Taylor, you only get 1. I'm sorry. One, what's the story behind the Stitch stuffed animal that you were showing?
So my story behind Stitch is I believe May of 2022, I was going to the mall with my friend at the time, and she wanted to get her boyfriend like a stuffed teddy bear. So we went to the mall, and we went to the Build-A-Bear in the mall. And I was looking around. Of course, I am a big kid at heart. I'm a woman now, but I'm a kid at heart. And I wanted to go to Build-A-Bear with her and everything. And so when we were looking around, and she was like, I want to try to find one. I saw a Stitch. Oh my gosh. And it was so beautiful. I'm having flashbacks. It was so beautiful. And I was like, no, I can't, because growing up, I always had so many teddy bears in the house. My mom was like, that's enough. And I was like, no. And so I told her that I was going there. So she was like, okay, just don't get no teddy bear. You have enough. And I was like, okay. So I was like, no, my mom's gonna fuss at me. I'm not gonna do it. And I was like, no, I have to. It's Stitch. It's not a teddy bear, it's Stitch. And so I ended up getting the Stitch. And when I did the whole process that you do when you go to Build-A-Bear and got the birth certificate, on the way back home, the date was the day my grandfather passed away from COVID 2 years prior, because he was one of the first cases in College Station. And so May of 2022, my grandfather passed away from COVID, and May of 2022, I purchased a Stitch, and I didn't even know that he was connected to it. So I used to take my Stitch everywhere, but my Stitch was more for my anxiety. But since I've become a woman of God, God tells me that he does not give us a spirit of fear, but he gives us a spirit of love, hope, power, and a sound mind. And so from that point, I leave my Stitch, and I'm just me.
I love that. I hope you know, though, that he's always invited at our events. Always.
Perfect. I'll pack him
And
next
so
time.
we tried to get Stitch NIL deals.
Stitch deserves NIL deals. I mean, Disney might have something to say about that, but that's another thing. Okay, so then the last quick thing, because we're just out of time. What would you both tell your younger selves when you were first walking into school? What advice would you give yourself? Taylor, I'll start with you. Or Aaliyah, you start.
I would just tell my younger self that, girl, you're her, and don't ever let anyone else convince you otherwise. And I would tell my younger self that you're gonna be great one day, so just have patience and stay focused, girl.
I think mine would be you can do it all and still be a mom. And I think that I learned that when in this too. I just think I was fearful of taking on that role, and I stepped into that role the same time I stepped into NIL, which was crazy, but that's what I would say.
Amazing pieces of advice. Thank you both so much. A round of applause for Taylor and for Aaliyah. I love, Taylor, that you said that the reason why LSU is investing in NIL is because it's a huge thing for recruiting. You're not going to be able to get athletes in the door unless you're going to promise this type of support. That was really mind-blowing to me. You really want the world record. We really want it for you, Aaliyah, and we are rooting for you at the Olympics in LA in 2028. In terms of getting these NIL deals, I think, Taylor, your advice was don't just go for this one. Go for the second, the third, the fourth, maybe even go for a whole job. And Aaliyah, you were saying that it's really important to you now. NIL made you a woman, a businesswoman and a woman of God, to think about how you're going to split your career, thinking a lot about the actual track and field obligations, but also doing what you need to do in order to build a business, support your mom, support your family. Your younger advice to yourself would be to stay focused and have patience, and Taylor's was that you could do it all and be a mom. So thank you both so much. And there's one person who I'm very excited to introduce too after this. We were talking about on stage brands that support NIL and the brands that don't, and Taylor was saying a lot of it is education to the brands, making sure they know. We've been working with Mass Mutual now for the past 4 events, and they didn't just put their hand up, they put their hand way up and have supported every Business of Women's Sports Programming editorial that we have done for the past year. So I'm very, very excited to now welcome Jennifer Halloran, the Chief Marketing Officer of Mass Mutual, who also, by the way, comes to every event. Doesn't just put the money there, she comes and she supports, alongside my partner in crime, Laura Carenti. Thanks all.